3229. Call today, 1-800-972-3229.
8:36 in our Team Hochberg Traffic Center. Jim Talamonte.
Northbound tri-state traffic is jammed from Southwest Highway up to the Stevenson Expressway. The ramp to the inbound Stevenson is still blocked after a crash and vehicle fire. Looking at traffic on the inbound Kennedy, it's just a little congested approaching downtown. Looking at about 21 minutes either way through O'Hare and the Burns Circle. Inbound Eisenhower, slow going 17th Avenue to Des Plaines Avenue and Ashland to the Circle. 33 minutes, 390 to downtown. Outbound 28. Inbound Stevenson from 355 to Lakeshore Drive, it's 30 minutes. Inbound Ryan, 22 minutes from 95th to downtown. Delays are from the Stevenson to the Circle. Downtown State remains blocked between Lake and Randolph for shooting investigation. It's traffic. I'm Jim Talamonte on AM 560 The Answer.
Chicago's Morning Answer continues next. Your official Chicagoland weather forecast from the 1 Hour Heating and Air Conditioning Weather Center. A warm day ahead, plenty of sunshine. We'll top out at 88. Mainly clear skies and 66 overnight. Currently 75. Next news at 9. Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan and Amy continues next on AM 560 The Answer.
Listen to AM 560 The Answer online at 560theanswer.com, on the AM 560 mobile app, and your Alexa-powered smart speaker, on TuneIn, iHeart, and radio.com. If you're looking for the latest news, insight into what it means, and the sharpest opinion, there's only one station in Chicago where you can turn, and it's this one. We're AM 560 The Answer.
Good morning, Dan and Amy. One of the disagreements between congressional Republicans and Democrats over police reform is on this issue of qualified immunity, removing qualified immunity for police officers. This is something that Tim Scott described as a poison pill for police reform legislation over the weekend, not included in his legislation as advanced. But a little bit of the legal history of qualified immunity maybe would provide the moment for some reconsideration from those just reflexively opposed to it because Democrats are for its removal. It really was advanced by the very liberal Earl Warren Court. Pearson v. Ray in 1967 relieved state officials from civil rights liability unless their actions violated, quote, clearly established law, unquote. That's the qualified immunity that everybody is talking about, many of whom don't know what they're talking about, but they're using the phrase, as is the case with these discussions. And the qualified immunity has created some externalities. Clearly established law, that's the key phrase. For example, police officers have escape liability for sicking an attack dog on a suspect sitting with his hands up. A previous case had found a Fourth Amendment violation, but the court held precedent didn't apply because the suspect in the earlier case was lying on the ground, not sitting on the ground. You see, they're clearly established law, so the facts in these cases have to be on point with previous decisions in order to obviate the qualified immunity. And that becomes a problem. It creates cases that clearly the police should not enjoy qualified immunity. An example, another case, police stole a collection of rare coins while executing a search warrant. Because such larceny by officers had not arisen in a previous case, the court reasoned the plaintiff's right not to have his property stolen by police was not, quote unquote, clearly established. So that creates a double standard. We don't like double standards when it's politicians above the rule of law. We shouldn't like it when it's anybody above the rule of law. And so maybe there should be some consideration for how qualified immunity has developed. I mean, the body of law behind qualified immunity has developed. And again, as Sheriff Clark, former Milwaukee County Sheriff David Clark, argued yesterday, the police officers, the individual officers, aren't the one with the deep pockets. It's always going after the police departments. Well, that's true, but it doesn't mean that police should enjoy individual immunity where they shouldn't. It also makes frankly, the case the cases out against police departments that much more difficult when perhaps they shouldn't be based on the merits of the case. One area of reform, but since it's, and I don't know that it's any sort of game changer for being able to remove bad police officers, but it certainly would help. It would help civilian political authorities remove bad police officers and deal with police unions with respect to those bad police officers, even conceding the point that that is the rare exception, these bad police officers, not the general rule, as is being misreported, frankly, by the D.C. press corps. So it's just one topic area I wanted to break down a little bit because there is so much blather about it in the public arena. For breaking down more of these police reforms and perspective as a career law enforcement officer, we're pleased to be joined again by Tom Homan, former acting director of ICE. He has written about the reforms that were embedded in Trump's executive order earlier this week. Tom, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
And thanks for having me. I appreciate that.
Well, so why don't we start with your perspective on what was included in Trump's EO and sort of by extension what's sort of flying in formation with that, which is Tim Scott's legislation in the Senate.
Well, look, I think the president has taken a great first step. I think it's bold action. He wants to continue to support local law enforcement because he knows that 99% of them are the good guys. And they join the force for the right reasons. They get up every day to do a job for the right reason. And he understands that there are some problems within law enforcement. So not only is he showing his support for local law enforcement, he wants to make sure we modernize, our police practices and upgrade the training, especially when it comes to use of force training and de-escalation. We all go through that. I've been through that numerous times in my law enforcement career. So that is something that's like Fourth Amendment training. Those three trainings you can never overdo, because you need to be, up to date on those, and you need to be reminded what you can and can't do. He also supports a database where officers who have used aggressive tactics and have been found to, use violence, police brutality, that there will be a record of that will be kept. And that way we hold those law enforcement officers accountable, and that way they just can't jump from one law agency to another law agency. Use of force is serious, and we need to track that. Through my years of training, use of force has always been the minimum amount of force necessary to get to compliance. So it's an escalation thing, but de-escalation procedures should always be trained. And I think the president's also looking at, rewarding those law enforcement agencies that step up their policies and step up their training to help prevent this type of thing from happening. We'll be able to achieve some Justice Department grants, help them buy equipment, help them get further training. So the administration is clearly prioritizing training and other programs for police and social workers. He wants the social workers to work more closely with police to deal with those with mental illness, those with drug addiction, because those are some of the worst interactions you have out there. So I think the president made a great first step.
Yeah, but in some liberal-leaning cities like Los Angeles, they now want social workers, unarmed social workers, to go in and deal with the mentally ill calls and the substance abuse calls. How do you think that's going to end?
It's going to end ugly. I wish those people that push that agenda would actually go out and do that job. Before they force the social workers to do it, go out and ride with the police and find out what these interactions are like. That's the problem. You have people making policies that wouldn't have the backbone to go out and do what the police officers do. Let me tell you something about this use of force. Until you've been in a fight for your life, which I have done. I mean, when you're told, okay, there's a guy across the parking lot, he's a big guy, and your job is to arrest him, and he's not going to let you do that. How many Americans are willing to walk across that parking lot, put hands on that person, and try to get him to comply with a lawful arrest when he told you, I'm not going to let it happen? When you're in a fight for your life, the fog of that fight is something that most Americans don't want to go through, never experience. They need to see exactly what the men and women of law enforcement do every day before they make these judgments, because they have no idea. I've been involved with one police shooting in my career. I was hoping to go through my career with no shootings. Until you walked in the shoes of these law enforcement officers, don't judge them. So, law enforcement should be at the table. These politicians want to talk about social workers getting more of the response capabilities. Is law enforcement at that table? Are there social workers at that table? Do social workers, unarmed social workers, want to go to domestic violence situation where that domestic violence situation is the number one situation in which somebody's killed or somebody's seriously injured? They got to think outside the box. They got to have law enforcement and social workers at the table before they make these policies. Because they're going to find out from both of those, they don't want this to happen.
Georgetown law professor Rosa Brooks, I know you're going to appreciate what she has to say, as you would any Georgetown law professor. She says that we need to stop training the police like they're joining the military. It leads to a culture of violence within the police.
That's just ridiculous. Look, it's just like when President Obama took a lot of military equipment away from law enforcement agencies, and President Trump turned around, which was the right thing. All you got, look, one example: the Los Angeles bank robbery happened about a decade ago. These officers were unarmed. How many officers were shot because the bad guy had fully automatic weapons, and the police officers were sitting there with a 12-round clip on their hip, and that's all they got. And look, they're not getting tanks. They're not getting surface-to-air missiles. The law enforcement officers are just getting like the armored vehicles. So when they approach a dangerous situation, they're protected. They have the right to protect themselves. So it's not a militarization of police. It's about giving police better equipment so they can handle the situation better and hopefully save lives in the process. Hopefully when you're in an armored vehicle to approach a subject, hopefully that doesn't end in fatality, where if they're approached with no protection, it may end in fatality. So it's not fatality. So it's not just about militarization. It's about saving lives and giving them equipment to prevent death. So, again, politicians have no idea what they're talking about. They haven't walked the steps of the law enforcement officers and see what they deal with every day. And it really irritates me because these are men and women. This is the finest 1% this country has. These men and women get up every day, leave the safety and security of their home every day, pin that badge on, and go out and take whatever they're going to take on, and may not come home that night. How many people are willing to do that? And again, I'll give you 1% of them are bad cops. They shouldn't be cops. They should never have been hired as a cop. And that's what President Trump's executive order is doing. He wants better training, better vetting at the beginning to make sure that we keep the bad guys out. But it's like every other profession. Doctors have killed more people than cops. There have been bad priests that have been convicted of child predator offenses. Should we shut down all the churches? Should we shut down all the hospitals because cops have killed people? It's just ridiculous. There's bad people in every profession, and we need to address that. But it doesn't mean you tear down the entire profession, the entire institution, which is only going to result in increased crime and increased death.
Yeah, I'm not for defunding police, but you make such quick second decisions. I mean, I don't know how any of the training in the world could help with that. So walk me through that. How do you do it?
Well, what it actually does, during training, you get the Sims training, you got hands-on training. Sims training is basically you're locked in a room and you're showing videos, and you're sitting with armed with an electronic gun that's going to measure your hits, measure when you shoot, when you don't shoot. And there's situations just sitting there in a restaurant eating dinner, all of a sudden someone starts shooting. It judges your officer's response capability. Does he shoot when he's supposed to shoot? Does he not shoot when he's not supposed to shoot? Does he not shoot a hostage? I mean, they go through immense training, and you can never prepare 100% for what happens because you don't know what's coming down the pike. I was involved in one shooting where my partner was run over by a van, and I tried to stop that van by hurting him. But all the training in the world does not prepare you for those life and death situations. You can be well trained, but you never know what's going to happen when you're facing this situation. I mean, again, as I described, you can train all you want and have all the right tactics and all the right responses. But when you're actually facing that and your life is in danger, or you're trying to protect someone else's life that's in danger, it's a response that hopefully your training will make you better at. Hopefully it makes your response quicker and better, and that you don't make mistakes. So training is a vital important of responding to life and death situations. But nothing is perfect. This world isn't perfect. Law enforcement isn't perfect. Law enforcement will make mistakes. And that's what the training would help do. But again, that 1% who shouldn't be cops to begin with, who did things like what happened in Minneapolis, no training is going to stop that. He shouldn't even be a cop, and he should be held accountable, and he should face charges and face the consequences, because all the training in the world is not to prevent that one bad guy from doing a bad thing because he simply wants to.
What about the two officers in Atlanta? Would you put them in the same category?
No, I would not. Matter of fact, I think the district attorney overcharged in that case. The district attorney who just last week, charged several cops with use of a deadly instrument when they pulled the college students out of the car. He said that tasers were a deadly weapon. Now all of a sudden he's saying tasers aren't a deadly weapon. So look, again, this officer, this suspect, took his taser. If you've never been hit by a taser, again, the district attorney probably never has. I've been through my training. I know what getting tased is like. It puts you can't defend yourself. Once you're hit with a taser, you can't defend yourself. And we've seen all the videos what happens when you're tased. So this subject turned around and aimed the taser at the officer. This officer took what action he thought was appropriate to save himself, because once you're incapacitated, you can't defend yourself. What happens then? So I'm not going to say if it was bad or good. I haven't seen all the evidence. I haven't seen all the tapes. But again, people need to put yourself in that position where that person resisted arrest. He fled. He grabbed a weapon, which I think is a deadly weapon. We all know that the cases out there where people have died by getting hit with a taser. So don't tell me it doesn't incapacitate you at least and can't kill you at one point. So I think this officer took action in the fog of a battle, and we'll see what happens. But I think charging murder I thought was a little much. I don't think he intended when he approached that scene to kill anybody. But we'll see what happens. I mean, I'm trying to judge something on just the minimum amount of tape I've seen. I haven't seen all the evidence and all the different tapes of the views of the tape. But again, here's an officer who made a split-second decision about. He felt at the time his life was in danger when he saw the taser being pointed at him. Because, again, if you're incapacitated, you can't defend yourself. You have a firearm on your hip.
Right, and this could be politically motivated because the DA has an upcoming runoff election, August 11th. So that could be part of the reason why he had such severe charges against these two officers.
Yeah, I certainly think it has a play in it. And you listen to his words when he talked about, that the suspect was compliant. The video I showed didn't show compliance. Once he tried to put handcuffs on him, he fought. So I think the district attorney misspoke, and I think he jumped to the conclusions too fast. He didn't wait for the grand jury investigation. He didn't wait for the grand jury or anything. I think he made his own judgment, his own decision, without having all the evidence in front of him. And we'll see what happens. Again, I'm not saying if this officer